All right, folks, we have with us now Mr. Dickie Crawford, political analyst, who has been here with us many, many times. And on the phone, Crystal Tomlinson. She's a friend first, motivational speaker, and the PNPYO president. Morning, Chris.
Hi, morning.
Great to have you with us this morning. Morning, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Hi.
We're here talking about the United States still imposing sanctions on Cuba.
Yeah.
And our Prime Minister recently spoken again, not for the first time, we've asked that those sanctions be lifted. What are we talking about when we say sanctions in the first place?
Well, sanctions against a country are punitive measures that are taken against a country. The excess has been Cuba. We call it an embargo. An embargo can go to the point where you even park his ship outside Kingston Harbor and don't make any food come into Jamaica. It can be that bad. But what has happened over the years with Cuba and America, they have cut off trade, cut off finance, cut off tourism travels, all of these things.
When you say cut off trade, which means nothing can't come to Cuba from the United States?
Nothing from the United States.
Nothing at all?
Right. At first, they allowed medicine and food in the early days. And then when Castro became associated with the Soviet Union, which he had to, because the decision was they were either going to find somebody to help them, America had rejected them, or they would die. Mm-hmm. But then after they did that, nothing at all could go into Cuba.
Yeah.
But it would have seemed like some progress was being made up until a couple of years ago,
right,
under President Obama.
Yes.
Not so much anymore?
No. I think the situation, the political equation in the United States of America has changed dramatically. And the hardliners are there, even harder than the old hardliners. And therefore, and then I think the present President of America has something in his bonnet where he wants to undo everything that Obama did. Mm-hmm. Now, Obama may not have been God, but he did some good things. But everything that he did, I think there's a personal grudge. You can pick up that, a political mission that he's on to undo anything that Obama did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And stamp his own authority on it.
So Crystal, let me get you to weigh in here. The Prime Minister has said, in speaking with respect to the SDGs, of course, everybody knows what we're working towards. With those, he's reiterating the call by Jamaica and the rest of CARICOM to lift the embargoes imposed against Cuba almost 6 decades ago. What is your feeling on this?
I think it's every year since, I think, 1990 or 1991, a resolution like this has been tabled at the UN. The international community continues to say the consensus from us is that this particular eco-blockade must be dropped. And the United States, as a major power player globally, refuses to observe that consensus, which is what the United Nations functions on. And so when you look at the international legal implications for a country deciding not to observe that consensus building mechanism, it's disappointing, particularly for an internationally leading voice on that stage. We understand the context within which Jamaica has been leading this sort of advocacy, save and except for 1980 to 1989 when we had several diplomatic ties with Cuba. I think under Mr. Seaga, we have been consistent about the right that the Cuban government has to handle its legal, domestic, political affairs, and that no external country should, for the reason of gaining some sort of economic or political advantage, prejudice them with a sort of blockade on trade. It is not the way that states are meant to function in the 21st century, especially under United Nations framework for consensus building.
Yeah.
Sir Dickie, one of the reasons is because some people feel that Cuba, they're not treating their citizens right, they're not treating or the way they should. What is the United States asking Cuba to do for them to ease the sanctions?
Essentially, the United States would like Cuba, first of all, to denounce whatever it is doing and line themselves up with them. And secondly, the United States wants all the property that was nationalized by the Castro government to be returned to the United States and its former owners. Remember, they did that, you know. It's a matter of reprisals. If you block me and no food can come into my country, what am I going to do? I've got to get land, I've got to get resources to plant, to feed my people. So it is an awful game that the United States is playing and has played, as Crystal rightly said. I mean, the invasion of Iraq broke every known international law in the world, and they should have been sanctioned, but nobody sanctions America because America seems to be, you know, the power boy in the place. But I must admit, this time, the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, this is probably the best stance I've seen him take on any foreign policy statement recently, and he's totally correct. You have to tell the UN, that's what I picked up from him, saying to them, listen, you are the guys that must make a difference in the world. You can't have us coming here every year and talking about free up Cuba, free up Jamaica, because Jamaica go through this too.
But as Crystal was saying,
yeah,
somebody's been saying this every single year.
Every year.
And it just hasn't changed. So.
And further to Neville's question or point, what are the odds that it will, especially under this administration?
Well, what the United States does and what Trump himself says he's now going to do, he's going to stop funding the United Nations. You see, America puts disproportionate amounts of money into the UN. So them say, all right, I'm going to take up my marbles and go home because you don't want me to. I want to play this game.
Yeah.
And if it's my money, I want to call the shots.
Yep. Crystal, as a young politician, what do you suggest should be done by us or as the Prime Minister done what we can do?
I think the Prime Minister has really done things that we can do. Understanding that we are a small state, the economic influence that we wield in this hemisphere is not sufficient to force anybody to act how they don't want to act. And importantly, we have to continue using that United Nations framework through those resolutions and voting and advocacy platforms that are available to see if we can convince, perhaps not this Trump administration, but subsequent administrations to continue a gradual rollback of those restrictions. It's important that we respect the process, because were Jamaica who had taken the stance of the United States, we would want them to respect the process of helping us to change our minds or to come into the future, as it were.
Can I ask, for the people who are asking why our Prime Minister would have gotten involved in this anyway, how does it benefit Jamaica? People are asking, why are business set up with Cuba?
He has to get involved. He himself outlined it, you know. Do you know that Jamaica is really the country that talked about and set up international human rights at the UN? I think it was you, Shira, who moved that motion when he went up there. So we are the founders of international human rights at the UN. In addition to that, Cuba is what? Cuba is our next door neighbor. Alexander Bustamante went and worked there in sugarcane and other things. We have a close tie. I have a grandmother who come from out of Cuba. So this is not a far-fetched arrangement. Then in any case, if you do not stand up against injustice anywhere, it's going to come and hit you eventually. And who's going to stand up with you?
Strength in numbers, essentially, is what. So I have to pull together and lobby.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
And I was glad he brought in the whole argument about CARICOM have to wake up and, you know, smell the coffee as well.
All right. Thanks a lot, my friend. Thanks, Crystal.
No problem.
All right, have a great day. And you have to give Cuba credit, because with all of this, they've stayed afloat, haven't they?
Haven't they? And they've been to Africa and saved us from Ebola.
Yeah, man.
Amidst all this danger.
And they're brilliant in medicine and brilliant in education.
So can you imagine if they weren't
around? What would happen?
Or facing what they were facing? How, you know, amazing.
Do you see with the change in Cuba now?
Yeah.
No more. Well, although they say Castro is still the head, but do you see them changing their ways in any way? They're still a communist nation, as far as I know. Do you see them?
They're looking at change. They did it before, and they stopped it because corruption came into play, and that derailed the effort. And I think they were embarrassed, you know, because Cuba preaches about high moral values and honesty and all that kind of stuff. But they're once more trying to go that route. But I think they're they're in no man's land almost now, having come out of the opening up by Obama, then now the closure by this present regime.
I don't know where to
Where
turn.
do they go, you know?
Other things are happening, communications opening up, and
Yes.
internet and all the rest of it.
Wi-Fi and stuff.
And what is their lifeline is the tourism industry.
Exactly.
Millions of people from Canada go to Cuba every year.
Thanks, my friend. Good to see you.
Yeah, man.
Dickie Crawford, political analyst, and we had Crystal Tomlinson, PNP YO president.